Hello, this is an APA Skills Assessment tutorial for English 102. I have 15 minutes to get through this assignment. I'm going to try and do it very, very quickly. First of all, this is the APA Skills Assessment that we're going to be discussing today. If you need to find it, you can go into the course, click on Unit 1A, APA Skills Assessment, then choose the Skills Assessment, and that's where we are right here. The one that I'm going to do today in this video is a different set of sources, but all of the rules are the same, and you're just going to follow along with these sources right here, because these are the ones that you're going to be completing for this semester, at least in the spring 2021 semester. If you're looking at this during a different semester, again, the rules stay the same, but you're going to be using different sources. So I am going to minimize this, and we are going to be working in a Google Doc over here on the left-hand side. And I have and I have the sources that I'm going to be using on the old skills assessment over here on the right. So what we're going to do is start by centering the word references at the top of the screen on the top of our page. And then we are going to look at this first source. This is a screenshot, so you can't copy and paste from it. But what we're going to do is we're going to take the author's last names. We're going to use their last name and then their first initial, and we're going to keep them in the same order that they are in on the article. You'll see also that there's an ampersand before we get to the last one. The next piece is the date, and for this one, we're going to use June 2019. So let me copy that in. The date always goes in parentheses, and it always goes year first, then month, then day if we had a day. The next piece of the APA entry is going to be the title of the article. In this case, it's Understanding the Complications of Sickle Cell Disease. But with APA references, you do not capitalize all the main words of the title, like you see here on the screen. Instead, you are going to capitalize just the first word of any subtitles, and any proper nouns or adjectives. So if you can see on the example here, the only word that's capitalized is the first word, and the rest of the words of the title are lowercase. The next thing we do is include the source. So in this case, this is being published in the American Journal of Nursing. So that's the name of the publication. We're gonna type that in, and we're going to put it in italics because it's a publication of a print journal, and that always needs to go in italics. We're gonna use a comma at this point so that we can include the rest of the source information. We have over here the volume, the issue, and the page numbers, and each piece of that information is formatted in a particular way. So the volume goes in italics, then we have the issue in parentheses, but not in italics, and it goes right next to the volume number. If you look at this, there's no space here. Then after the issue number, we have a comma, then a space, and then we include the page numbers with no italics and no parentheses. And the reason that each piece of this information is formatted differently is so that if something is missing, we can still, the audience, whoever's reading this entry, can still tell what's the volume, what's the issue, and what's the page number, just based on the way that those things are formatted. Now this is a database journal article that was printed in a publication, so we are going to be looking for a DOI, and if you can see on the screenshot, we have that here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that DOI, which stands for Digital Object Identifier, and it's usually just a really long number, and we are going to turn that into a web link by adding https:// doi.org// and then we just put the number in that's listed on the article. So this first part will stay the same anytime you have a DOI, and then you just copy in the number from the article for the second piece. So there are some other things we need to do. We need to put this in a hanging indent. I'm I'm going to wait to do that until we get more entries on the screen. It makes more sense to do them once we have them all done. We're also going to alphabetize them based on last name. So since this entry starts with a T, it's probably going to be pretty far down on the list, but I'm going to do that after I get the rest of my entries up. The second article is also a database article, but if you look carefully at it, there is no author. So we are going to use the article title first. And again, we use that same capitalization rule where we do not capitalize every word. This is the date information that we have. So we're going to put year first and then month. We're going to put it in parentheses and we're going to end with a period. And then we're going to copy in the source information. Remember, the source information includes the publication where this was published and the volume, issue, and page number. And remember that each one of those pieces is formatted a different way so that we can always tell what's what. Now, this one doesn't have a DOI number listed. And because it is a journal, printed journal article that was printed in a publication and it has a volume, issue, and page number, we don't need to provide any other information. So this is the end of our second entry. Scrolling down to the third one, we're going to see that this is an internet article. This is just a page on a website. So we're going to format things a little bit differently in order to indicate that this is an internet article instead of a printed journal or database article. So this one also doesn't have an author, but we have an organization, and we can appropriately guess that the organization, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, is responsible for this data. So we're going to use them as the author. And if we look on this page carefully, we'll see that there's no date. So we can't just leave the date out because then it looks like we've missed something. So instead, we copy in, or we type in N period D period in our date parentheses to show that there is no date. It's very creative, huh? Now, this one is a little bit different because, as I said, this is an internet source. So for this one, we are going to actually put the italics on the title instead of the italics on the source. And that's how we tell that it's an internet article versus a database or a print article. Depends on where the italics are. So we still use our same rule. We're not capitalizing all the main words, but we are italicizing the title. And the source does not get italicized. So it's exactly opposite to the first two articles that we did. In this case, the source is going to be the United States Department of Health and Human Services. And then we're looking to see if there's a DOI. There is no DOI listed, but we also don't have volume, page, and issue information. So we have to include something else to help our audience get to this source if they needed to double check some information. So we're going to copy the URL. If this was a source in your references on a research paper, you could actually just copy, click copy and paste the URL at the top of the page. Unfortunately, this is a screenshot, so I'm just going to copy it in from off screen. All right, so that is the end of our third entry. And then our last entry is also an internet article. Oh, they are giving you that's what that is. Sorry about that. So the last entry is also an internet article. And this one, if you look carefully, it does have an author. So we're going to go ahead and go with author's last name and last name, comma, first initial, and then a period. And then we're going to include the date, and we have the full date this time. We have the year, the month, and the day. So that's that. And then we have the article title. And again, because this is an internet source, we are italicizing the title, not the source. And you can see here that I haven't capitalized all of the main words because of that title capitalization rule on an APA references page. The source for this article is CNN. That's the publication. That's who is, providing this information. And then finally, because we have no DOI, we are again going to just use the link, the URL where you can find this in place of a DOI. So I'm copying that link in here. So these are our these are our 4 sources for the first part of the APA skills assessment. What I want to do now is put them in hanging indent. Now in Google Drive, you do that by going to Format, Align and Indent, Indentation Options, and under Special Indent you can choose Hanging. Make sure that this is 0.5 or ½ inch. Hit Apply. And now you'll see that we have a hanging indent, which is where the first part of the article, or the first part of each entry, is all the way to the left margin, and any subsequent lines get bumped in so that you can easily see where each entry starts. Now the last thing we have to do in order to make this APA appropriate is alphabetize it. So Centers for Disease Control goes first. Oh, I messed up my references. Sorry. And I messed up my spacing. Just undo that. The next one is Curious About Cold Brew Coffee. And then Hunt is the third. And then Tanabe is last. So this is the correct order. We also want to very quickly make sure that we are in double spacing. It should be double spaced, so it is. All right, so that's the first part of the APA assessment. The second part involves just doing citations based on these directions down here for 5 different embedded citations. You do not have to write out the sentences. You are just going to include a list at the bottom of your references page that looks something like this. Okay. For the first one, it's asking you to show how you would format a citation when paraphrasing information from Article 1. Well, Article 1 was the Tanabe article, and in order to paraphrase, all you need is the author's last name and the date, the year, sorry, not the full date. Because there are 5 authors for this source, you don't list them all out. You just list Tanabe et al. And then you put a period, and then a comma, and then you use the year. So if you were paraphrasing information from this article in a research source, this is what your citation would look like. For the second article, you are also formatting a citation for paraphrased information. But the second article, if you remember, it didn't have an author, so you can't use author's last name. So for this one, what you do is you use the title instead, but you put it in quotation marks. You do not use the whole title, you just use the first 2 or 3 words. And you do capitalize all of the main words in your citation, unlike on the actual reference itself. And then you use the date, just like we did for the other article. And then for the third one, it's saying, how would you format a citation when you are paraphrasing information for the first time? This one is important because the next question asks how you would format a citation not the first citation. So it is. So it's asking you essentially the first time you cite it, you're going to write out the full name of the organization, and you're going to include an abbreviation in brackets. But then any time in the future when you need to cite it, you're going to not use the full name and you're only going to use the abbreviation. So that's why these examples are important. This one is important because it's asking you for a direct quote. So if they're asking you to cite a direct quote, you have to remember that you're always going to include either a page number or a paragraph number. So if this were a print article that had page numbers, it would look like this. Page 6, for example. Okay? But because it's an internet article, there's no page numbers. You're just counting paragraph numbers. 1, 2, 3, right? And then you include the paragraph number in your citation. And then finally, the last one is just a citation when paraphrasing information. And so it's going to look like just the standard author's last name and date. So you can use the information in the APA references part of the course to help. Good luck!